Welcome to the Centralized News, our weekly coverage of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, DeFi, and the macro news that affects it. Welcome in. I'm Peter DeVries, joined by my co-host, Ozzy. Please remember, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research. But let's jump right in. It's been a big week. We've had lots of regulatory news and FUD out there, and there's plenty to talk about around that. But one of the things that came out today, we're recording Monday, this is going to post Tuesday, some pushback against the SEC, but we have House Republicans. They've been talking about this, but they did, in fact, introduce a bill to remove SEC Chair Gary Gensler. What they want to do is restructure the agency and in that way remove him. So these are Republican senators, becoming more and more a political issue. Warren Davidson and House Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota, so this is Ohio and Minnesota, introduced the SEC Stabilization Act that would restructure the SEC and remove Gary Gensler from his post. The bill would restructure the commission to redistribute power from the chair to all the commissioners. So it would take the power out of the chair. And it would also add a sixth commissioner, because right now there's five, and it's always weighted one way or the other. So right now it's Democratic. We have Gary Gensler, who, by the way, is the former CFO of Hillary Clinton's campaign against Trump back in the day. So he's a political figure, whatever people want to say about him. But right now it's weighted towards the Democrats. There's 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. So remove that, and it would create an executive director position that would oversee like a CEO, and they probably still have some additional power, but it would completely change it. So yeah, that's what it was all about. Did you see that story?
Yeah, it's everybody's baby on Twitter today. I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense in the fact that how he's been acting and behaving towards crypto has been unwarranted and almost on his own, completely away from necessarily the representing of the views of the American people or all of Congress.
Or maybe more in line with the current regime in terms of Biden. You also have Democrats, Senator Elizabeth Warren. But yeah, no, I agree. But it's a regulatory body. It shouldn't be political.
It shouldn't be. And that's why they want to put it under this regime so that it is less political. But then you could argue that by not having a split, then there's a chance that nothing ever gets done, or that they battle. It's a battle for who gets named to the table.
Well, it's more in line with the Federal Elections Commission, which should be seen as not political because it's elections. They should just be there to protect the American people and their wants and desires. So I see it as overall positive and a little bit of a pushback. In the end, Gary Gensler is the chair, and they do have a lot of power, and they are pushing back on crypto, and they're using enforcement actions before legislation to do that, and it's having an effect. There's no doubt about it. But it's nice to see a little bit of pushback. And I'm excited to see how this election year unfolds and if it's going to be an issue that kind of shapes the election year, and if we can get some younger representation in there, honestly.
Yeah, it'd be pretty interesting. Do I really think this bill will pass? Probably not. Do I think it's starting discussion? It's showing that there's interest and kind of recognition of the role of crypto? Absolutely. And I think that is pretty cool coming from 2 relatively important House members in 2 relatively important states, relatively swing states in Ohio, and Minnesota's maybe a little less swing, but Ohio is definitely considered a swing state in most elections.
In the end, there's a lot of young people in this country that see the innovation getting pushed offshore, and they're not going to get the chance to participate in it. And I think that is a thing, and a lot of people don't want to see that, especially the younger generation. But that being said, before we get into the macro, we'll talk about where we're at in the Bitcoin halving cycle. We're under a year out from the next Bitcoin halving, which happens every 4 years, about 300 days or 10 months away. I saw an interesting chart, and just to show the adoption, there's been a lot of negative news, so I just wanted to articulate a little bit some of the adoption that's going on. The blue line here shows the hash rate, and the black line represents the price. Back here on May of 2020, we were below also, and this was the last halving. It's normal where we're at. We're seeing a lot of adoption. We're seeing the hash rate continue to grow. And hopefully we'll see another one of these peaks with the price too. So just a reminder, everybody don't get too scared. I don't think the blockchain invention from Satoshi Nakamoto, I don't think it's going anywhere. Just buckle up and get ready for next year.
Yeah, in the end, a lot of this is in the forefront right now, but in 3, 4, 5, 10 years, it won't really matter because because crypto and its use case will take over and will ride out any of these narratives. So
yeah, these temporary narratives. One of the kind of midterm, short-term narratives, I guess, is the Federal Reserve. We've been watching this one for a while. We lived through first part of your whole life was very low interest rates. What are you, in your 20s now, Ozzy?
yeah, mid-20s.
Your whole life was low interest rates.
Oh, yeah.
But now we're seeing high, and we're all watching and waiting for when they've paused. When is this going to change? But this week is a big week. We have CPI coming out Tuesday, then PPI coming out Wednesday with the Fed meeting, with expectations about a 75% chance of no rate change, but a 50% chance that they raise the next one, which is a bit confusing to me. But
it's essentially saying, hey, we might see a pause, and we're still seeing that number shift. We're actually seeing almost an 80-20 split right now for tomorrow's meeting. But now almost a 75% chance that at the next meeting they raise. So it's becoming, and the forecasts heading out are getting more realistic. If we look at the September meeting, it's still heavily weighted to at least be another rate hike, almost 70% that the rate hike will be held through September. A little bit lower heading into November with about 54%. And then December, we're seeing it's only 26%. So people are betting a little bit more on the short term that we are going to see rate hike, at least one more rate hike. But there's some feeling that maybe in November or December that starts to relieve, especially as we head into next year, looking especially towards January and March. So it's pretty interesting, but definitely favoring at least one more rate hike, but likely a pause in this next meeting.
I guess it does depend a little bit on what we see with CPI tomorrow. Core CPI has been real sticky, hasn't moved much.
And people are still expecting core CPI to be sticky. The median forecast is for another 0.4 read on core CPI, which is the same read as last month. What's very interesting, though, is that people are expecting CPI itself to come in at 0.1, whereas it was at 0.4 last month. So I don't know if expectations and median forecasts are a little too eager, but
when you say 0.1, you're saying it's going to go up a little bit.
Inflation would be 0.1%, but last month it read at 0.4%. So it would be a decrease in the overall rate of inflation, making the year-over-year CPI closer to 4% compared to 4.9 last month. So this is interesting to see with CPI. If we hit those numbers, if we're above expectations, I expect a pretty sharp change in the market, maybe favoring not a pause. Noting on the pause space, Canada raised their interest rates for the first time since January.
Oh, we'll see where we go.
After seeing that inflation was more sticky than they like. So
is that the canary in the coal mine?
Yeah, the Eurozone has officially entered a recession, and then we've got Canada, who had been one of the first ones to pause rate hikes, and inflation had seemed to cool off in Canada, but got sticky, and so they've decided to hike rates again. So
But even that seems like two competing things, because like entering a recession would seem to put pressure on the Fed to not raise, whereas inflation being sticky but not entering a recession would seem to give them more free will to raise interest rates.
Yeah, we're seeing competing narratives. A lot of people are afraid of this narrative hitting the US of essentially GDP growth slowing while inflation staying sticky and them having to continue raising rates. I don't know if this is going to be the case. GDP growth in the US has remained quite strong. So it's just whether inflation remains sticky or not. We're watching PPI. PPI, they're actually expecting to go negative 0.1. So that.
Can you give me the TLDR? What's the difference between the CPI and the PPI? The CPI comes out Tuesday when we release this. Wednesday, the day after, will be the PI. What's the basic difference between that?
So CPI is consumer price index. So it's the price of goods that consumers are paying, and then the PPI is producer price index. So it more has to do with the cost of raw materials and what producers are paying to acquire their goods. And so they're expecting that to actually be negative this coming month. And so that would be a major change, about a 0.3% drop month over month. So it'll be quite interesting to see what that means. PPI has been lower in terms of year over year numbers compared to CPI, but it is an important underlying number.
I know. The other kind of story coming out this week that I thought was interesting was all around the Ripple case. So a lot of what's gone on with the SEC is they brought up things that are securities, and there's quotes that everything might be a security, and they've named names in their lawsuits. So just more and more names are coming out. But one that hasn't been mentioned so far is Etherium. But Ripple and SEC seek extension on unsealing the Hinman Documents. So the Hinman Documents. James Fallon, the defense attorney and ex-federal prosecutor, has been closely monitoring the Securities Exchange versus Ripple case the past few years, and he thinks this document could be released tomorrow, 6/13. The Hinman Documents relate to a 2018 speech from former Securities and Exchange Commission Corporation Finance Division Director Bill Hinman, who essentially stated that Ether was not a security. The documents involve the SEC's internal discussions and deliberations about the speech, so it may give some insight into what they think about ETH and whether or not it's a security, because there seems to be debate. Not only is there debate, but there's just everybody wants to know. It'd be big news. So any kind of information would be very interesting to read.
Oh, it'll be incredibly interesting, not only because of what it could mean for the Ripple case, but it could shed some light on what we're seeing right now with Gary Gensler and the attacks on Binance and Coinbase.
Yeah, so keep an eye out if this comes out. They've been putting it off and putting it off. It was June 6th it was going to come out, and before that, there was speculation coming out earlier than that. So hopefully it does come out. I feel like it's a bit of a tease, but it would be an interesting read for sure.
Yeah, it should be coming out tomorrow at the Tuesday, based on the most recent article. So I think it could bring a lot of strength to the case for XRP and for Coinbase and for Binance, at least on the registered security front or unregistered security front. So it could be very interesting.
Yeah, if XRP can win that case, a lot of alts could win their case, I would think. Not all, but it would just... not all of them will be securities if XRP can win.
Exactly. And the big thing is, why did XRP and Ripple seek the extension, and why was it not just the SEC? To me, that's a little bit worrisome. Maybe XRP is worried that it's not necessarily beneficial for their case, but the SEC also doesn't think it's particularly beneficial for some of their stance that they're having currently.
All right, we'll keep an eye out tomorrow. I would love to read it. But the big news last week, Monday and Tuesday, SEC took a break this Monday. They seem to come out swinging on Mondays and then take a week off or two. But the SEC charged first Binance on Monday, then Coinbase on Tuesday with lawsuits. But since then, we've had a chance to parse it out and see what's the difference between these two lawsuits. Binance seems to have the more serious one, but Coinbase was charged with unregistered exchange, broker, and clearing agency, and unregistered offer and sale of securities in connection with the staking as a service program. Binance got both of those, but also charges that included fraud and commingling of funds and direct attack. They're looking at like 13 charges. They're looking at communications between specific people. So it seems a little bit more serious. In this article that I read from Boardroom, they speculate that ultimately the SEC is looking to make Coinbase pay civil penalties, whereas in Binance's case, they're ultimately pushing to prohibit Binance and CZ from doing any business on American soil.
Yeah, there's actually potential criminal elements to the Binance case, whereas Coinbase, there is no criminal elements. It's solely a civil case. We haven't really seen, so far, we haven't really seen the necessarily criminal charges for Binance, but we have kind of seen their framework and where they're thinking about in terms of commingling of funds and fraud, especially. And the fact that they also went after CZ specifically in the Binance case, whereas Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, was left alone, and it was Coinbase as an entity itself that was charged.
Yeah, in addition, on Tuesday, the day after the Binance, when the SEC filed an emergency motion late Tuesday to freeze all Binance.us assets, attempting to freeze the crypto exchange US bank accounts to block CZ from moving any customer funds around. So they seem to be going after them in a pretty serious way. Like you said, different than the more civil way with Coinbase, the civil lawsuit.
Yeah, Binance.us and Binance itself has faced much more strict and quick actions from the SEC. The injunction is an important piece to note because Coinbase didn't face an injunction or any, hey, you need to pause the exchange and pause trading. Coinbase itself has even said they're not delisting any of the assets on the exchange that the SEC called securities, which is a pretty strong move, but it means that Coinbase is feeling at least semi-confident.
They are putting up a staunch defense, and doesn't look like they have any sign of backing down. Brian Armstrong has gotten some pushback from other people saying, like, why are you trying to take on the SEC and coming into an all-out fight with them? Some people question that tact, but I think a lot of people in the crypto sphere do like to see him fighting for our rights. So we'll see how it goes.
I think the big thing is that the potential clarity that it could provide and how it could actually help Coinbase stock and coin stock if, you know, there's regulatory clarity in the US, it would make their business just that much more attractive.
They're a first mover. They've dealt with kind of the worst in terms of regulation, and they've come out the other side. I think it would be good for their long-term case. But yeah, in the short term, it looks pretty rough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll continue to see some pain as U.S. deposits onto Binance US are paused, and we're seeing the assets of Binance.us owners and employees frozen on the exchange. So users
Go ahead.
Users can still move their funds around, but owners and like CZ and any high-ranking employees at Binance cannot move their funds. Yeah. So that's pretty important.
We can always say this: not your keys, not your coins. Just be careful keeping anything on an exchange. Hopefully, you didn't have them there in the first place, but people do. And speaking of not your keys, not your coins, Robinhood, another central exchange, but a very easy to use one and popular for retail investors. They're going to delist Cardano, Polygon, and Solana. And this is some fallout from the SEC action. Nothing official that says they had to. And their press release was a little vague, but they're going to drop their support for these digital assets on June 27th. A press release discussed the process of delisting, but gave very little information. So just details, going to end June 27th. You're fine till then. But the decision was made, quote unquote, based on our latest review, the company stated. But yeah,
their latest legal review, and that just basically means, oh shoot, the SEC is going after them. Robinhood is not really a crypto native company. They're more of a stockbroker trader, and they weren't going to argue or try to put themselves at risk.
It's almost like the opposite of the stance that the Coinbase CEO is taking. They're just like, no, you're right. It's all good. We'll take it off. Like, no need.
Exactly. And keep that June 27th date as a note. I don't know how much crypto, especially Cardano, Polygon, or Solana, is held in Robinhood, but users that are holding those digital assets on the exchange and have not sold them or moved them off the exchange by June 27th, it will be sold for USD. So could create
I
a
was just
small
wondering that.
sell.
Are they even transferable on that platform? I'm not even 100% sure about
They
that.
weren't for a long time, but they had recently been made transferable.
Okay, so you could, if I own Cardano, I could transfer it out, but instead of just dealing with that, and if I'm new into the space, I may just want to sell and get out of there. But it's already down, so maybe you want to just move it, hang on to it. But yeah, but your point is well taken that whatever assets are still there on June 27th, there could be a big sell on that date.
Yeah, I don't know how big of a sell because I can't imagine that there's a massive volume of those cryptocurrencies on Robinhood, but there's still a chance. And so
Sure.
watch those dates, especially if you're holders of those three cryptocurrencies.
Speaking of moving funds around, the SEC crackdown on Binance and Coinbase has caused a surge in DeFi trading volume. 444%, I read.
Yeah, it jumped in within 48 hours of the SEC's recent legal action. So quite a huge jump. Binance and Coinbase were probably the biggest exchanges, at least within the Western Hemisphere, up until now. And so there's been a lot more trading volume on Uniswap and PancakeSwap as a result.
Yeah, I remember when FTX went down, Binance was the last big central exchange, it seemed like, but they've just been getting
They've been getting
knocked down.
hammered. They've been getting
Yes, just like consistently, not like overnight, but man, just boom, Paxos. Now, this lawsuit, just one after another.
Oh, yeah.
He's been throwing the four up all year, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. It's been pretty crazy. It follows this trend, though. We have been seeing jump in DEX and perpetuals options platform volume for several months now.
That's
So
true.
this has just continued and maybe accelerated the trend.
Yeah, I saw there was this article from Blockmanity where KEX volumes reached a 4-year low. This is a trend that's been going on for a while. To hit 4-year lows.
Yeah. So that's not unexpected. It's a low. It potentially suggests a low within the market as well. But something to
Yeah.
keep watching. Maybe it continues dropping. If it keeps dropping, then maybe it does show that the traditional centralized exchange is disappearing and dying.
It wasn't meant for decentralized finance.
Exactly. So it's really interesting, especially because Hong Kong is inviting Coinbase to set up shop there, even though the SEC is scrutinizing the exchange.
Yeah, this was a Hong Kong legislator, Johnny Ng, took to Twitter to invite Coinbase and other crypto exchanges to establish operations in the region. He's just, you can come over here. Come on. Yeah, it just points out January 2023, the Hong Kong Financial Secretary Paul Chan declared the government's dedication to establishing a strong ecosystem for crypto, and they've been diligently formulating regulation and implementing
Measures, compliance measures to nurture the expansion of the industry. We're also seeing that the Hong Kong Monetary Authority is revealing its intention to establish the groundwork for introducing a retail CBDC in the near future. Hong Kong is moving into the space, and
Yeah.
but they're saying, hey, you don't need to necessarily do it through our banks, you crypto exchanges, Coinbase. Come set up shop here. We want you guys and your innovation to be part of our system.
Yeah, I'm hoping the tide turns a little bit. As a U.S. citizen, I don't want to see it all go away. But the Winklevoss twins seem to agree with me. They came out, I think it was today, saying that the war on crypto being led by Senator Warren and Gary Gensler and the Biden administration will hurt Democrats. They have a quote. Both twins have quotes. Senator Warren, quote, Senator Warren, Gary Gensler's war on crypto is going to alienate an entire generation of would-be Democrats. So Democrats always try to be kind of the big tent for everyone, and getting the youth to vote for them is a big part of it. And the youth vote rescued the U.S. Democratic Party from defeat in 2020, and that alienating him now would mean lost votes in the next election cycle. His brother Tyler reinforced this, tweeting that Roe versus Wade cost Republicans the midterms, and that Senator Warren and Gary Gensler's war on crypto could cost the Dems the 2024 election. I don't know. I personally don't quite see it like that, but maybe there's just not enough people that care or understand this industry enough yet, especially young people. But I would love to see that. I hope they're right.
I think young people make up the greatest demographic of people that care about crypto.
But they don't vote.
Some of them do, and some of them potentially care about crypto enough to vote. I think that may be an understatement. Yes, they don't vote as much, but if the youth vote made an impact in the most recent election, then why can't they make an impact this time? Especially if there's something that is potentially very important to them, if they're big crypto fans like we are. Looking at most of our viewers are 18 to 25.
Yeah.
So
Well, get out and vote, guys.
Yeah, if you care about crypto, try and
let's
find.
Let's be single issue voters.
I don't know if we want to encourage that, but yes, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
Another little story coming from the fallout of all this SEC stuff is they have now named a total of 68 cryptocurrencies of like the 25,000. So it's really not that many, but they've named some big ones, are now seen as securities by the SEC. The total number of cryptocurrencies the United States securities regulators has accused to be a security has now reached 68, after adding a few more with the Binance and Coinbase lawsuits. The 68 cryptocurrencies accused of being a security comes from years of various litigation, nothing from legislation, undertaken by the SEC, which has outlined what cryptocurrencies it deems securities. But it does cover 100 billion worth of the market cap of a 1 trillion, so about 10%.
It's most of the top 10 cryptos.
Yeah.
Outside of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tether, and Doge. Essentially, all of the cryptos within the top 10, potentially excluding USDC, are named, and many of the cryptos within even the top 20 are named, although not as high a percentage.
But the other thing to point out with this is that he could name anything at any time. Next Monday could come and 10 more securities are named in another lawsuit.
He could name the rest of the stable coins. He could go after Tether, DAI, and US and USDC and call
Ethereum.
all of those securities, and then you're talking a circulating supply of USDT of $83 billion. You're talking a really significant amount of money right there, and then another 28 billion in USDC.
I wouldn't put it past him. In a February 23rd New York Magazine interview, he's on record, Gary Gensler, as saying everything other than Bitcoin is a security. And shoot. So it's worrisome. It could just change any moment. Oh, here you go.
Yeah.
Polygon, Matic, Cardano, security. I think that caught the industry off guard a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think that's why Circle is seeing what's going on in the air. And they hired the former CFTC chair, Heath Tabert, to be their top lawyer because they can see these macro headwinds, and they want to be protected and represented by someone who understands securities laws and regulation quite well. He worked at the World Bank and at Citadel Securities after working as a regulator. So we're seeing Circle kind of take notice and try to set themselves up to be safe.
Even with all this regulatory scrutiny and worries about securities, Ethereum developers are still developing, and they've cemented their final lineup changes for the Dencun upgrade. So they've lined up the EIP's proposals that will be included in it. So on Thursday, they announced at the heart of it was EIP 4844, most commonly known as Proto dank sharding. This feature will help scale the blockchain by making more space for blobs of data, which then is expected to decrease gas for the layer 2 rollups, basically. So basically decrease gas fees for layer 2 rollups. And there were some other ones.
They're working to improve the designs for bridges and staking pools so that they're safer and more efficient. We're also seeing some minor changes related to the Ethereum virtual machine and to get rid of code that could terminate smart contracts. So some really big things when we think about reducing fees and protecting bridges and staking pools. Bridges are the main source of hacks that we've seen in the last year, and so we're seeing two major changes there. With that said, even though we're seeing this big upgrade that seems really bullish for Ethereum, we have been seeing Ethereum insiders like the Ethereum Foundation, one of the Ethereum co-founders, and several large Ethereum whales moving ETH onto exchange. And usually you move it onto exchange to sell. Between the Ethereum co-founder and the Ethereum Foundation, 70 million have been moved onto exchange to be sold since May 7th. So not a small amount. Ethereum co-founders and the Ethereum Foundation tend to be very good at predicting local tops. And so this could be indicative of a local top maybe before we head into the decon upgrade, and maybe we're in to see a little bit of pain before the bullishness and the news of this upgrade really spread to the masses.
It goes in line with kind of the Bitcoin dominance going up and the whole summer lull theory, things calming down, less interest in the space. Yeah, I tend to think it's no time to rush into alts and things like that, generally speaking, right now. But maybe this, what you're saying, reinforces that a little bit, and I hang back at DCA, but slowly, because could go lower. It could always go lower. But there's been some other development as well. And this is with a centralized exchange, which was interesting because Kraken's the one that hasn't been mentioned. They settled a lawsuit with the SEC. So I don't know if that means they're out of the woods, but they still list Matic and some of the stuff.
I don't think they're out of the woods. I don't think that is
But they listed they had a development this week. They're continuing to develop. They launched their NFT marketplace. While the SEC is pushing back, there's still a lot of adoption going on. And on June 8th, Kraken NFT reveals its platform has officially moved out of beta, and they have over 250 collections already available and plans for further expansion. They want to establish themselves as a prominent player in the NFT space. This is a US-based company. They're featuring zero gas fees unless you're transferring out of the ecosystem, which is pretty cool. So if you're buying and selling there, you're not paying any gas fees. That might attract some people. Gas fees are a big part of it.
If you're an NFT flipper and not an big NFT holder, traders, it could be very interesting. It's much Binance marketplace. They have an NFT marketplace as well, so it's lining up to try to compete with Binance, and we already have a ton of marketplaces, so I don't know.
That's true, but it's just seeing the continued NFT adoption from a US company. It's just interesting to me. And then part of the launch, Kraken NFT has entered into a partnership with Formula One Williams Racing Team. The specific details are yet to be unveiled, but users have a unique opportunity to have their NFT features on F1 race cars. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, just with NFTs, there's just continued adoption because Starbucks is on Polygon. You have Nike, they're on Polygon. Matic,
on Polygon.
Yeah, so you have the SEC coming after them, but on the flip side, you see a lot of adoption in the NFT space, particularly. So it's just fascinating to watch this all unfold.
Yeah, things aren't out of the woods for NFTs just yet. Looking at new rules in the UK, free promotional NFTs or crypto airdrops would be banned under their new rules, according to their FCA's Matthew Long. This is to essentially prohibit the promotion of investing in digital assets through the giving away of NFTs or cryptocurrencies. So
It's like
this
free
is,
one.
yeah. So this is interesting, as airdrops and free NFTs are some of the ways that either new ecosystems or new projects gain prominence.
Yeah, again, if you were part of the Arbitrum airdrop, you participated in that.
Yeah, I did. And it
Yeah.
made me fall in love with Arbitrum, even not for just because of what I got in airdrop, but just because of the opportunities and the experience that I had with the chain. So
Right.
important
It's like
to
it
take
works,
into
works just as
consideration.
good as any other chain. Why not? Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, interesting. But airdrops and freebies can be dangerous, and there are a lot of scams that come with airdrops and with free promotions. So I can see that side of it too. But yeah, with everything going on in the space and all these SEC crackdowns, one of the questions that kind of came to my mind was the fact that in all these SEC, CFTC, New York prosecutors, everything, I haven't seen anything about NFTs being named securities or stable coins being named securities, although they did go after Paxos a little bit. So it just made me wonder, are NFTs a security and are stable coins a security? There's so many different types of NFTs. Collectibles like baseball cards or something seems like they wouldn't be considered securities, but that's just one type of NFTs. So I guess it's
The
going
Top
to
Shot, there's a case against Top Shot's moments right now, which are videos of professional basketball stars making famous plays.
right.
They're being sued, and they're potentially being considered unregistered securities against Dapper Labs. So this is not something that, if it were an actual trading card, is that a security? No, most people would say you don't need to register your baseball cards as securities if you're selling them to someone else. Why would these NFT Top Shot moments be NFB securities? But that's the case right now in front of regulators. And how do regulators distinguish between these different NFT projects when you can
So
often have
many.
new ones every day?
Yeah, and then there's NFT projects like, say, Wolfer Finance that is like investing. They're like saying they're going to invest it for you. So how can that not be considered a security almost? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're lining up for two other big cases for the SEC. When we talked about stablecoins, you mentioned it. They went after Paxos and BUSD. They listed BUSD as a security in their case against Binance, and they made Paxos stop creating BUSD because they considered it a security. So we're seeing lawyers say it's not necessarily clear cut. On the surface, it might seem like an obvious no, but it could be argued that arbitrage, hedging opportunities, staking opportunities provide an expectation of profit. And there's different cases when you think about Tether or an algorithmic like Frax, whether it's algorithmic or fiat backed.
And how that changes it. And then it all comes down to people constantly refer to this thing called the Howey test, which is from 1946. The Howey test was a legal test in the United States. It was the Supreme Court versus W.J. Howey, and has since been applied to numerous cases. And it has this four-pronged test, and you have to answer yes to these four questions. Did you invest money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profit to be derived from the efforts of others?
And
But does this apply? Can this be applied to all the different new crypto decentralized type of assets that we're talking about now?
exactly. And if you look at kind of questions 3 and 4, does that do stablecoins fit those descriptions of expectation of profit and to be derived from the effort of others? One could argue that there is or is not an expectation of profit, and that profit's derived from the effort of others. That's hard to say. If you're staking your stablecoins, it's not really from the effort of others. You're lending out your stablecoins, so you're just being rewarded for lending, just like you'd be rewarded for lending in your bank account. So this is kind of.
I can't help but think we need a new test and a new Supreme Court ruling. Like eventually it's going to have to come up to the Supreme Court. I just can't help but think that.
Yeah, maybe the Stapper Labs case is the one for NFTs.
Who knows?
But
No one's ever heard of WJ Howie Company. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's not so much the company that matters. It's the precedent that is set. It could be a small company. It could be library or whatever. You know what I mean? Something you're not necessarily involved in, not Etherium, but that's the precedent that we need. And then that could be referred to in case after case.
Exactly. So something to keep an eye on as we move forward.
Well, right on. That's why we keep an eye on the space here in Decentralized News. And thank you so much for listening. We post to YouTube first, so please consider subscribing to catch our videos as soon as they drop. Our goal is to provide unfiltered content with a little bit of our personal biases, unfortunately, can't be helped, but hoping to foster genuine discussions to help the entire space grow. Please remember, this is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. This show is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research before making any investment decision. And thank you so much for your support. Stay tuned for the next episode.